Hello and welcome to episode 164 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogyn1701, and you'll have to forgive me if my voice isn't 100% tonight because I'm on the downswing of an illness here. Just your average sore throat and congestion and all of that kind of stuff. But here to pick up the slack is my crew of super intelligent space monkeys, Greendragoon and DuncanIdaho.
Are we going to have to Vidian up Drogyn?
Yes, he'll have to surgically implant somebody else's larynx, perhaps.
Okay. Do we have any volunteers from the community?
Or sinus system. The Vidians didn't ask for volunteers, as I recall.
We're nicer, though. We're enlightened 2409 Vidians.
There you go.
No, we'll ask first, and then we'll take it by force.
Well, I mainly what's remained here is the cough, so I might have to mute myself every so often to avoid coughing on the air. But anyway, Markhawkman is not available tonight, so we will carry on. We decided to start tonight in the space map from the Fleet dilithium mine because it has some kind of cool stuff. That for some reason I did not see this big sort of, I don't know, I guess it's a mining ship over here.
Or like, I've always thought that
platform.
was like a refining station or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It almost looks a little like that big generic ship that we have in the Foundry.
Oh yeah.
But obviously a lot larger.
Yeah. I like just with the irregular shape and then this other structure, we could do so much with this thing.
Oh yeah.
Like just like combining them in different ways. I mean, it's basically the kind of the almost ideal kit bash station because you can just insert whatever else you like. Even just copy the station, insert it at different angles, and all of a sudden it's a new station. It just fits together because it sort of is made to look disjointed.
And Riemann style as well.
Oh yeah, that do. You got the green lights. And just
we don't have like a lot of Riemann stations or anything much.
Yeah, we just got the one. We just got the one.
Just the one.
Yeah, and that's been the that's been a really great asset to have. It's like, hey, it's a space station, it's a city skyline.
Now, one thing from this map that we do have in the Foundry, and I think it's something that was added to this map recently, post Delta Rising, is the these freighters that are roaming around. We got to give Greendragoon some good news just before the show starts because he inquired if those are in the Foundry, and yes, they are.
Yeah, right now
the Talaxian freighters from a couple of Delta Rising missions.
The big scimitar is giving it just a friendly little inspection, just saying, hey, how's it going? We're just going to warm up our weapon systems while just pointing at you.
Oh, you're scaring it away.
Oh, come back. We want to be friends.
But yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool design.
Hey, there's no reason a freighter can't look stylish. Speaking of ships in the Foundry, I do not remember if I had either found these or mentioned these on the previous show, but the Husnok ship and the Miridorn ship are from the previous the current lockbox are both in the Foundry, in the costume creator. So you have access to those. One of the things that we should mention with the Husnok is, of course, it's quite famous for being the first of a huge long list of kit-bashed models that appeared in Star Trek some 20-odd times. It was just reused and reused and reused, including the Amari Heavy Escort, which is the current R&D promo ship. That was one of its kit bashes. That is not in the Foundry just yet, but I'm sure it will be. And I asked Thomas the Cat if he had kit bashed the Husnok model just like they did on the show, and yes, he did.
They showed off some similar elements in the back. So it's got the same overall sort of hull superstructure, but it's got some of the same engine components in the back as well.
So didn't this lead to like a whole revelation that this ship was actually like redressed and reused like 20 some times on the show?
Yes, absolutely.
Upside down, right side up.
With added bits and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, all the way up into like DS9, and I'm not sure if it ever appeared on Voyager, but it was definitely a
I would not be
TNG
surprised
and
if it
DS9
did.
staple.
It might have been on Voyager.
Probably an early Voyager if it was.
Yeah, back when they're still using the physical models.
Yeah, after a while they started using CGI. So
yeah, and once they started using CGI, then they just started reusing the Voth, one of the Voth ships, for a bunch of different things too.
Yeah, they reused it for the Turret.
Yeah, and that later got worked into Stowe as a actual connection. I think it like may have shown up one other place too. But yeah,
so one of the interesting things that you can do with the Husnok vessel, though, is one of its reuses was as a Bajoran ship. So until we get that version, or if we ever get that version, Foundry authors or even in-game players could use it as a Bajoran ship if you wanted.
Would the Bajoran ship actually be closer to the Amory though?
It was a little closer.
Yeah,
hey, Mark's here.
Yeah,
that's weird. Did you guys call me or no?
Yeah, we tried.
You were listed as away, so we weren't sure if you were there or not.
Weird. I have no idea why it said I was away.
Yeah, you can change your online status, so it may have accidentally got set.
Anyways,
we're glad you're here.
Hey.
Yeah, because I looked at this time. I was like, wait, they should have called me by now. So I went and looked to see what it was.
All right. Well, we're talking about the the Husnok ship.
Yes, that's one of those things that looks like it would be interesting to use.
Yep, and with the color patterns too, that you can sort of like if you just go with the stock paint job, it does almost have an icon, like a very recognizable view because there's no other ship that's that blocky. But with a few of the different paint jobs, you can sort of break up the brickness of the ship with additional lines and coloration to help kit bash that in other forms.
Now, the only downside is there's really not a ton of customization options for it in the Foundry.
You got the sort of the underside, which was
there's a little protrusion on the underside, which you can either have or not have.
Yeah, but because it's only got that one hull material, I think that's probably going to be the biggest limiting factor on how much you can really do with that, because it has to be gray. So you got to be doing a lot with the paint job to make that look like something else.
But the funny thing is that, Thomas can keep slapping new parts on it and put it in as more canon ships.
That was actually something rather amusing that Kale pointed out, was that what's the best way to put this? The reason why it looks so much like that other ship is that it's actually the same studio model, just redecorated a little bit.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying. I'm sure some people would cry foul, though, if they did that, to be like, you're just doing this on the cheap and selling it to us several times over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like with the Trill ship. I mean, there's a whole lot of people who simply wouldn't recognize it as being Trill, period. But...
Well, I mean, it's not the only one. There's several different ones that were kit bashed over and over again.
Isn't that basically almost like every ship besides those that were had like
feature race ones?
Yeah, that's a feature race. So it's like you're basically looking at like anytime there's like an Alien of the Week transport coming into dock at DS9, chances are it's probably a redressed Husnok.
And of course, even
or redressed Akamarian ship.
Even some of the CGI models were reused. I mean, what is it? The Tellarite ship that appeared on Enterprise in season 4 was actually the same as one of the Xindi ships from season 3.
Oh yeah, that would be.
I think it was a Xindi Primate ship or Arboreal or something like that.
Yeah, like a miscellaneous little transporty thing.
Yeah.
And
so
then
I mean,
think
you were saying people complaining about just redressing the same ship over and over again and keep selling it to us. That's kind of what I want them to do, because if they're spending very little time
Star
on
Trek
the
tradition.
if they're spending very little time on the lockbox ships, it just means that they're spending more time on the rest of the game, which we can all play.
Yeah. And at the same time, too, I mean, you get a lot more options. The more species ships they add, the more options you have to build different crews out. And I think that's sort of like an undersold element. It's just with all these lockbox ships, you could technically make, in some of these cases, a full crew based on that. So you just assume that, hey, we're just in a small group that's doing a lot of work for the Federation, and I'm going to, well, Husnok would be a difficult one to RP as. Very difficult.
Because it's an extinct race, so we don't know what they look like.
Exactly. But, I mean, you could use creativity. You're all holographic Husnok.
I know, I wouldn't be surprised
that's the interesting thing with the Husnok, though, is that since there's so little actually established about the race in canon, I mean, you're almost like free to completely make up your own stuff.
Yeah, like you could basically just do the Zenkethi treatment, more or less, within the confines of the Taylor, and just do what Cryptic did for the last season.
Before the actual Zenkethi came out, I had made my own a long time ago in the Foundry. They didn't look anything like what Cryptic came up with, obviously, but
yeah, because I mean,
there was no canon to go on.
Yeah, I mean, we don't quite have the ability to do full-on cyborg Ninja Turtles, but
no.
But so anyway, though, it's just
it's in the Foundry, so we got that. I'm sure the Amari R&D one will show up soon.
And will become every single miscellaneous transport or raider or miscellaneous alien to the ship or alien to the weak ship from now on, for at least as long as we appreciate the inside joke.
Yes. Not a lot of news going on other than that. The top 3 system is still down, but we know it's on Kale's radar at least.
Yeah.
He wrote it down in his notebook to talk to the devs about.
His special community stream notebook, yes.
These community streams are going to be like a weekly thing now, right?
They basically took our old time slot.
Yeah.
So if you were looking for stuff to do on a Wednesday, then yeah, just tune into PWE's stream, and Kale will be doing not quite a song and dance routine yet, but just doing a variety of things. And for his first one, he actually, at a little bit of prodding from me, streamed Rogue Enterprises Hero of the Empire. So we've got for the first stream, Foundry Mission did feature for a part of that.
We have successfully or begun the process of corrupting our community manager over to a Foundry sympathizer.
Yeah, so we just got to keep egging him on for creating a mission of his own, because
we know he started.
To be honest, I suspect Kale didn't need much prodding to like the Foundry.
It's a likable thing. But we need to get him to the point where we can just chant in a very slow monotone, "One of us, one of us." Or not, depending on the situation.
Very odd group we are.
Yes.
We're talking about corrupting community managers. I don't think any other Star Trek Online podcast does that. We're actively plotting how to infiltrate Cryptic. We have a sleeper agent.
Well, sleeper may not be the right term for it. More like,
because it's Manchurian candidate type thing.
Well, I wouldn't call it a sleeper agent. More like an what's the best way to put it?
An inside
something
man.
That's not a shall we say secret asset, really. Just
there's probably an intelligence word for it. But that probably would have popped up on the recent news, but I've been blanking.
I don't know.
Like I say, there's nothing secret though about Zero.
No. Yeah, well, we're talking about hey, we'll get Keel on our side, and Maria's just sitting on her throne in Cryptic, which I imagine is very elaborate.
What about me?
Yeah, in great.
What am I? Chopped liver?
We should say obviously she's been on our side the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah,
even if limited in what she can do.
Yeah, so we're not quite at the point of like, Kale's our new favorite daddy. Like the parents are fighting. Very odd family, the Foundry community.
Getting weirder and weirder.
All right, so
there was a track of the podcast that we're following, like news. So there's not a whole lot going on in Still right now.
No, there isn't. Obviously, we're in the middle of the Mirror Universe event, after which I'm sure the summer event will be starting.
Yeah, so we've got that to look forward to soon. As like something just to throw out there for people, if you kind of want to get in the spirit of like what's going on with like what'll be happening in the future, Rise and Foundry missions. I mean, could be something to have fun with. Just ramp up to the actual event.
We have the old map and many assets from that old map.
You can also use some of the Oasis maps too. They're still in the tropical vibe. It's just other parts.
You know what about that old map though is cool. The old Ryzen map, you can use your power boards on it.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
another good thing is that since we now have placeable water volumes, you can take one of those old deserty maps that has, like the Oasis type stuff and add more water to it.
Yeah,
I mean, you got a lot of good options there,
and we have floater volumes as well.
Yeah, so like building your own
many
little
things.
Yeah, because you can kind of imagine like the main resort in Rise is kind of like the kind of the Monaco that just everyone's got to be there, but you can also do just very easily other places. Yeah, so
it's a whole big planet.
Yeah, so custom build, like I would recommend trying a custom build out on Risa. Just if you just are looking for just something to do in the Foundry right now.
Do like a Founder's Cove.
So
a place for all the Foundry authors to go hang out. Kind of a social zone. Or social.
Maybe we'll do that as a on-air build.
That could be fun. To keep that one of the cards.
Yes, indeed. So let's see. Let's talk about what we've been working on. Duncan, since I'm sure will have the most to say, we can start with you.
Okay. And then Dragoon just sighs heavily.
Although you told us just before the show that you'd actually taken a little bit of time off. Right?
Yeah, so right now I'm just like I've got a bunch of work in from basically the week before, and then this week I'm just sort of taking a little bit of a breather, working on some other stuff in real life. But just taking easy with the Foundry because I'm sort of hitting a wall with a bunch of different builds. Because I started working on Legacy Beta, my Enterprise B mission, then Apex got spotlighted, and now I feel it's imperative to try to finish off the AEI series for people, because a lot of people are wanting me to finish that. So I forced myself to go back to Epoch Part 2. And I got a lot of work done on that one. It's almost build complete. I've got one more map to build, and then that's it. Everything else is kind of like Johnny Snowball style. Adding in the dialogue, combat, everything else after the fact. So what I'll show off here is first look at Epoch Part 2. So my last AEI mission that finishes up the arc started with Apex. And it kind of nicely explains, I think, kind of what was going on with Apex. So just with a few visual cues later on in the mission, I'm not showing any of these maps off now. But there's quite a bit there's some nice circularity developing with the project. But we're looking at I'm not going to say a whole lot about the background of this, except that these are all maps that take place in the distant future. So 4.6 million years time. Space station, there's basically a dying galactic civilization, multi-galactic civilization, and the player is going back to the distant future to try to put everything right. So the one thing is that space map is something I'm actually having a little bit of fun with this time around. It's actually a planet-breaking operation that you sort of, you just happens to be where you end up in the future, and the first thing you do is just sort out some little domestic problems to help you along the way in solving the big stuff. So you've got a little bit of an objective, but you stumble into another situation, and you're going to help out the locals, who will then in turn help you out, progress along the way. So we've got a space station, we've got a planet, and then we've also got a couple shots of that space map, which is pretty fun. Because especially
sounds cool.
Designing, a sort of a planet-breaking mining operation that uses gravitic fields to sort of channel. So you break one planet, then use the debris of that planet or that planetoid. So this is like just a very close multi-moon system. So you have your main planet, then you have a bunch of moons. You use the debris from one, you channel that through a series of gravitic fields into another planetoid, break that, and then you sort of keep cycling the debris and grind everything up, and that's how you start refining. So that's been fun to sort of think about how that's sort of set up and sort of go a little bit out there with some of the tech, just to try and kind of show that this is a different time setting. So that's what I've been working on for the maps, and I'm also finalizing the character designs too. So that's basically done as well. There's just a little bit more space for miscellaneous background aliens at this point.
I didn't think you were ever done costuming.
No, I can just go to a different project. So it's funny is that like I got into a vibe of just like for a little while I was only building costumes, and that I done my next Starfleet security costuming. I mean, that's completely done. I haven't built anything more than one map for that, and it's not even 50% complete. So here is a look of some of the main characters from Epoch Part 2. So you have Dakita, you have Yatagi, which are two main characters from Epoch Part 1. I've adapted their visuals to show there's a little bit of time passing, and also just because I felt like I can do better designs now because we got some more assets. We also have Setsa, who is also still kicking around the 4.6 million year time scale, even though she is from my Starfleet Security series. She's got an updated look as well that kind of fits with what's going on with her character at this point. And we also have the villain from Apex, Prometheus. He is going to be showing up for the finale. So explaining a little bit of what's going on with his whole thing. So you got the main characters, you got the villains, we got the backs. Everything's basically squared away now. I've just got to finish writing and sort of doing the moment-to-moment dialogue and other bits too.
Cool.
So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And like as we can see from especially Yatagi, the Vodwar and Lucari pieces have already found a good home.
All right. Mark, have you been able to get in the Foundry?
I haven't really had as much time as I would have liked for that. Or, well, yeah, to be more accurate, I just haven't actually spent as much time as I would have liked, I guess is the best way to put it.
But we did see that you got a new laptop. Is that right?
Oh, yes. It actually runs the Foundry quite nicely. So.
Yeah.
Hey!
The actual demo pic was something taken from inside the Foundry, if you may have noticed.
Yeah, we saw that.
I just did that because I wanted to see what the Beta Ronis station would look like. And with all the like fuzzy lighting and stuff, it actually looks really, really cool.
I remember well how it is to go from having to run a game on minimal settings to being able to run at full blast. It's quite a good feeling. Dragoon, you were telling us that you haven't been in the Foundry much, but you're trying to somehow motivate yourself to get back to Part 3.
So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like...
how we can help you with that.
I'm kind of like Duncan in that I hit a wall a while back on Part 3 where I kept getting into a number of things that I haven't figured out yet in my head, and so far inspiration hasn't quite struck on those, and so I'm kind of stalled on moving forward. And so,
well, there's a couple. You were mentioning maybe working up a schedule for yourself, which could work. Honestly, about the only way I get things done is if I have a deadline.
I know that feeling
personally. The other thing would be to essentially crowdsource. If you got something that you're stalled on, put it out there to some people and ask, hey, how would you deal with this? Yeah,
I mean, the problem is that the problems are vaguer than that. Some of the maps are built. Some of them aren't quite. It's a problem of I haven't quite visualized how I want that portion to work. I mean, I think a while back I showed off there's one map that has to take place inside like an asteroid base, and I've kind of figured out a couple things, but I haven't figured out what I really want to happen on there, because it's primarily a point A to point B type of map, but that's in of itself is not enough.
It needs to be more interesting than that.
It needs to be more interesting than that. I mean, it's also things like I've been working on this quite a long time now, and so I don't have the energy of the things that I've already figured out to really kind of carry me forward anymore. Because you get all excited when you figure out something, but then as time goes past, your ideas don't seem as awesome as they once did because you've had them for so long. So they start to feel commonplace. And so it's just kind of fighting that. I mean, it may be great. I mean, everybody else may love it, but it's just that I've been... It's like hanging out with that one movie that you've watched a bajillion times. It's like, no matter how great the movie is like after a while you get sick of it. So it's usually... I mean, I kind of ran into the same thing with Part 2, which was also a very long development. And so I want to say I kind of worked my way out of that one by using a schedule. I kind of just started breaking down and focusing on specific tasks. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of toying with that as a summer
I have to say,
project.
The only times I've ever done a mission that actually was reasonably quick in terms of development time is because it was one of the Foundry Challenge things, and I was trying to get it done. Because otherwise, I just kind of like tend to, I guess you could say, assign it a relatively low priority, and too low a priority to realistically get it done in a timely manner.
Yeah. And there are no shortage of distractions. Like mirror universe evasion events.
In-game and out of game.
Yeah,
And
because
Cryptic
once we're
is
out of this,
definitely...
we're done.
Yeah. You know, time spent wandering around Morrowind is time not spent in the Foundry. Obviously.
And if it's not Morrowind, it's a galaxy far, far away, or Middle Earth, or Snow itself, or
so many
wherever
distractions.
Neverwinter takes place.
So I've been in the Foundry. In fact, today, I've been working on my air quote challenge entry, which will not be in the challenge, of course. It's just using that prompt, which, as we should mention, go play, go vote.
Yes.
All the details are on the forums. So I was working on costuming today. There is a nice guide. It's a little out of date, but you can still use it, to canon uniforms and colors on the... I believe it's on StowWiki. I just always Google for it, and I believe it's on StowWiki. But the Infinity and the Atlas are supposed to be kind of, very, very shortly before the motion picture. That's kind of where I worked out it to fall in the production line. So I figured, why not have everybody wearing TMP outfits? And there's quite a variety of colors, all a bit muted, but still different colors.
Yeah,
there's a bronze, there's an orange, there's gray and white, basically. So I've been filling out the senior staff for the
one thing
Infinity.
that someone mentioned when that was being discussed on the forum is that the people who came up with those colors may actually have had some sort of a scheme in mind, because apparently they do kind of sort of fit with some sort of department scheme. It's just that it's apparently has like 7 departments or something like that, that it's broken up into.
Yeah, and the guide has them all labeled and everything. So I've been going by that. They have operations and security and engineering. Some of the distinctions are pretty subtle, but so I've been doing that. And then I also figured, okay, so the plot is you get whisked off to this alien planet where people have been disappearing to for ages, including the Atlas and her crew, or the Infinity and her crew. And they get put in stasis, and you thaw them out. So I thought about it, and it's like, I wonder if there's other people in stasis there that they could also thaw out from maybe different time periods. Uh-oh. So I and Duncan knows where I'm going with this. I had him build a uniform for me the other day. It's the sort of armored security outfit from I think it first appeared in Star Trek 3.
Yeah, so do you want me to... I've still got screenshots for that
You got a screenshot of that?
Yeah.
The closest you were able to come up with uses the racing uniform from Drive.
Yeah.
Which was a clever thought.
Say, post in the chat and I'll...
Yeah, so I'm just posting those now.
So I thought, this alien technology on this planet has been abducting people, essentially, for years. Ships and away teams, randomly. Or seemingly randomly. There will be an explanation for why. And one of the things that they abducted was like an away team from the, Wrath of Khan-ish era. Or a security team of some sort that disappeared, were never heard from again.
You can start having fun with that too, just because that opens up, like, depending on how far back this planet goes, just about anything. Because you can bring in sort of like if we had the NPCs from ancient Iconia, those would be totally fair game. The Takan Empire, I mean, people from that, Borg.
I still like my personal fan theory that the Iconians were somehow behind the collapse of the Takan star.
Could have some fun with it too. I mean, go to a stasis pod and unthaw it and it's Borg. And it's like, oh crap, thaw it again, or freeze it again, freeze it again.
Voth. Oh, Voth too. I mean, just anyone really. So yeah, you could have a lot of fun.
I don't want to go like too overboard with it and distract from anything, but a couple of story beats about that could work.
Yeah, because I have a similar setup in my Enterprise B mission. I mean, kind of very, very similar. But I'm kind of like, that's one of the things I haven't really thought about, because I've got the Enterprise B trapped in, the cruising stasis. I could put in other species too, and I've got a couple of background NPCs to that effect, but I haven't really given a lot of thought to like either hand waving that whole thing away or indulging with it a bit. Because I got a reason on that one. I want to get to that mission, but I got to make Epoch first. Oh. But yeah, it's just like you can just go take that premise in so many different ways, because then you can focus on the thawing, you can focus on the planet. Maybe there's some other problem going on there as well. So yeah, that should be a fun one, especially with the builds.
The other thing I was doing today, I was building a map, and I was telling you guys about this before the show. I was building this elevated floor. This is going to be like a big thing that the primitive race that lives on this planet is going to essentially have. They've designated it as a temple, but it's actually just an old alien structure that has a different purpose. And I was building this elevated floor, and then I went to test, and I guess I'd been duplicating a floor piece that did not have the right height on it. And I mean, this was a lot of them, so they were all down there, and I was like, you know what, heck with this for today. So obviously I'll be going back to that, but
yeah,
it was one of those where I was like, yeah, I'm done for the day.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now it's serious time.
So the only problem I have with this mission is I don't have it all completely thought out, which makes my building structure, building process feel a little aimless at the moment. I'm just building things that seem cool.
That's basically how Legacy. That's how Legacy Beta's been taking effect. Because I built the Sierra Starship interior, like the first Fed one we showed off in the show, just like, hey, this is cool. I thought I'd make a mission out of it. Then things changed. Then I made what I've termed Crap Station 1, which is featured on the show. That was another like, hey, this is a cool build, and I thought I would use it for something, and then it got turned for something else. But I'm sort of at a point of the project I really like. I got to an idea that I really like for like the whole, what's going on is the big plot. I only found that out through iteration though. So by working through the project, going from step one, seeing what works from point to point, and then, getting to a certain point and thinking like, okay, what would, bring everything together or twist things around a little bit and give players something that they will definitely remember.
Well, what I really need to do is sit down and outline the whole thing, beginning to end. So that way I know exactly where each map falls and where the progression is, and I can start figuring out what my objectives are and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And like, even for me, just doing that, just sort of working through it and just getting to that outline of just like the general, like I just had map 1, map 2, map 3, map 4. And then it's basically, I just thought about, okay, what I would need on this map, what I need on this map. And it's like, oh, I can use this NPC in a different way that I hope. I kind of have a suspicion that Cryptic might be going in this direction, but I'm definitely going to get there first. I'm just going to lock in this idea. But anyway, though, it's just like just getting to that point where you're able to sort of think about the structure, just seeing part of it in place, and then just start working with the outline and storyboarding, or our equivalent of storyboarding, which is just more outlining. But once you're at that point, it might come together a lot more.
Yeah. All right. Let's move along. We got a mission review that we're going to do tonight. So I don't know if you've played any of the challenge missions, Mark, but the rest of us have played, or Duncan and I have played all of them, and Greendragoon has played Atlas's Infinity by XR377. So we thought we'd go ahead and review that tonight. So let's see. It's Federation for any level. This is one of the 3 challenge missions that we got. So let's see. This is the summary. Investigating the myths of a fledgling spacefaring race leads you down a trail haunted by the many ghosts of a lost starship. But as the multitude of roads converge, you may find yourself questioning the truths of this fractured tragedy. Did her crew risk the fate of the quadrant on a selfish attempt to escape? It behooves to remember that in mythology, Atlas attempted to trick another into carrying his burdens, for it must be carried for all eternity. I think this was probably the only of the 3 that actually included the whole Atlas myth in the mission, which I thought was quite cool.
I thought it was really cool. I mean, it managed to draw in quite a few parallels to the myth in a Star Trek-y way.
Yeah.
Is this the one where at the end the bad guy concludes that the only reason you were able to beat him is because you're a descendant of Hercules or something?
No.
No, not that one? Okay, then.
Sometimes when you got these groups of challenge missions, it's hard to remember which one is which, especially if it's been a little while since you played it.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Mark, so you might be thinking of the Helena back. Oh, that was another one that dealt a lot with Greek mythology.
That one's from a long time ago.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
You guys go ahead.
So I guess I'll kind of start skimming through it. It starts off, you are meeting this race who is recently kind of started to venture out into the larger galaxy, and you're basically sent in to conduct these negotiations. And so after arriving, the story kind of skips forward to the end of the negotiations, and you're wrapping up, and they're basically planning out this to take these delegates over to Denobula. And the delegates of this race are like really hesitant to go that particular direction, calling it, I can't remember exactly what they call it, the Screams of Infinity, I think was the term. Or the Space of Infinite Scream, something like that. So it eventually gets decided, and it's a little weird how this conversation works out, that the other starship that you're with there for the negotiations are going to take the delegates the long way around, like go around the space, and you're going to kind of head on through straight to Denobula, and then kind of just keep an eye on sensors to see if there's anything unusual on the way. So
I knew as soon as they started saying, "Oh, this is a horrible area of space. We don't go there." I knew that we were going to go there.
Of course we are. All right, so you set course, and on the way, you pick up a distress call from the USS Infinity. You drop out of warp and attempt to defend her from Tholians, who are attacking her. You destroy the Tholians, but not before the Infinity is destroyed. So you guys are kind of trying to figure out what's going on here, and you come to the conclusion it was probably some kind of a temporal anomaly. And so you decide, okay, we're going to start scanning for it. And we think we kind of pick up something in this direction. So you make another warp jump, and you end up getting knocked out of warp when you basically trip over this anomaly. So you decide to investigate, and basically you start scanning, and you realize you're picking up a distress call now, still from the USS Infinity, from inside this subspace rift that you've found. So you end up proceeding in. I think we might have lost Duncan.
I just came back.
He's back.
So you end up.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been trying to follow along with the live stream on my tablet. So yeah, we discovered that the Infinity is, or we don't know it's the Infinity yet, but we know that there's been a temporal event that a Federation starship has suddenly appeared, been destroyed, no survivors. And then we are sucked up by that same, a spatial anomaly in that same area.
Yeah, so we go inside and we basically find the Infinity trapped between these two converging layers of like subspace and normal space or something like that.
Yeah, converging, or at least two converging levels of subspace, which has significant complications for the rest of the sector, because if these converge, there will be an event that will render warp drive unviable for that entire sector.
I've got a screenshot for you.
Kind of like tossing a pebble into a pond and making ripples so you can't float things in the water, right? Maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe.
It's like, think Omega explosion, except worse.
Well, I mean, if I remember right, the explanation that was given in Voyager for how Omega explosions disrupt subspace and make warp drive inoperable isn't the commonly mentioned in fan circles idea of destroying subspace, but merely making it too turbulent.
So this would have been a very big disruption of subspace, so probably working along the same lines.
Yeah.
So there's just going to be a really big event in subspace, and the Infinity is the only thing keeping this from happening. So you then board the Infinity to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and so you've actually found that they've basically created this static warp bubble that's been running for like the last 130 some years. And that's basically holding these two layers of subspace apart and keeping apart.
Yeah,
but that the ship's basically been cannibalized to the point where there ain't much left of it.
Well, I mean,
it's in pretty
good shape.
It's still in good shape. It's just it's just unmanned at this point. So it's running it's just all it is doing right now is just running this. It's just maintaining the warp field. So there's no crew left. It's completely derelict.
Where the myth comes in, it's Atlas holding up the world, essentially.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So
because of course it is an Atlas class ship.
Yes, and that was really nice. Sort of that was a really good tie-in.
A cool way to
the class, and the name of the ship too. he did go into a little bit more detail, because we find that there's a little bit more going on here, because there's not just this one infinity.
No,
Yeah,
apparently
it's been like throwing out copies of itself, essentially, or something like that.
they basically tried to do this experiment to escape with like involving this this quantum phase thing. I'd be lying if I said I fully understood it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
he
it
really
like
went
that
into
thing in
detail on-
Voyager where the Voyager gets duplicated?
It's a little bit more like the all good things. I got a little bit more, or just you get all the like. There's just basically
Actually, you know what it reminded me of was there's an episode of Stargate Atlantis where the Daedalus is hopping between universes,
Oh, wait.
and it kind of reminded me a little bit of that.
There's actually no. It's not. Oh crap! It's not all good things. It's the one where Worf gets basically thrown out of his quantum state.
Apparently.
Yeah, so it's probably
one.
something along those lines. But basically, what they
That's
said
where-
is the ship has basically been ship and crew are altered because of this experiment to basically occupy all points or that point in space at all times.
Yeah,
So-
so it's all quantum
in all
states of
universes.
this. So it's just all the infinities of all the different parallel universes
And
are
the
basically
one-
in contact.
And
So
the one that you encountered earlier in the mission was one from another universe.
yeah, so you basically find that there's infinite infinities doing the Atlas thing. So
Yeah.
that was a really good, really good
He
connection. there.
really went into a lot of detail about this like scientific or fictional scientific thing that's going on here. I mean,
Yeah.
like a lot of detail.
Yeah, and that's where I
Mhm.
kind of got a little bit lost, because even when I, like I sort of was on the right page, and it's like, okay, I can kind of skip the technobabble a little bit. It kind of went on a little too long. So that's my one critique of this one. It's just sort of the shortcut wasn't short enough, or at the very least, it's sort of like there was really, really good dialogue, especially with the captain choice options. I got a really big kick out of those, because there's this great range of the very sensible captain, but you also had this wonderful range of snarky options for the
Always fun.
captain. But anyway, though, it just sort of like it went on a little bit, and I know I've probably done the exact same thing too with all my missions.
So I think where it got a little weird for me was with the door that you escape through.
That was kind of the one thing. It was kind of like the what happened to the crew, because it kind of comes around to they basically tapped into the Nexus. I mean, that was my read of what happened.
Yeah, or
especially with
something
the-
He
similar
never
to
says Nexus, but I got that too.
brought the Elurian in. So
Yeah.
that basically means Nexus. You got an Elurian talking to you. She's dissociated from her quantum state. They basically found the Nexus. So that was kind of how
And
they
the
dealt
Nexus
with
was always kind of a weird concept and hard to pull off.
no comment
Yeah.
there, because
The basic premise of the Nexus strikes me as the sort of thing that theoretically you should be able to create portals into. It's just that no one's figured out how.
Yeah,
although
and the
it's
fact-
basically portal
Apparently,
sims.
you can doing whatever it is the Atlas was doing.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
but
kind of like
it
it was just a
never-
side effect.
They never
So-
explained where the door came from. I mean, it was
No,
just
it
they
was
found
just
this
that-
door in sickbay and they
It
went through
almost
it.
kind of seemed like a kind of a joke, because there used to be that door in sickbay in the Foundry that was open and led into space.
Yeah, it's literally just a door to nowhere,
Yeah.
which I actually used as a sort of like a piece, like an actual feature for that one map I threw together.
So it almost felt to me like the door was almost like an inside Foundry joke.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of worked to explain what was going on with the crew. It's just kind of like at a certain point, like especially with it sort of got maybe a little too deep, and
Yeah,
ultimately,
I feel like it
And
kind
I
of dipped into the science fantasy a little too much more because you couldn't really ground it in any way back in the science fact side of
Yeah.
things.
or it kind of like it was still sort of in the range of Star Trek. It's just like we're dealing with the multiple quantum states, two folds of subspace, and then what's probably the Nexus. So that's kind of like, and the writing was solid throughout. It's just that
That was maybe one. That was maybe one too many things to.
Yeah, it's just a little too hard to sort of wrap that in, especially with what happened to the crew, because that was never explained. It was just referenced that they went through the door. So there's kind of the idea that, oh, they're in the Nexus, they're happy. But again, it's kind of not, because it's sort of like what kind of threw me off a little bit was the way that we solved this is basically just to, reinforce the warp field and then the Infinity, and it just set it up so it'll last for longer. But we don't fix it. And
it's almost like it's like kind of like a part one of something.
Yeah, you could almost do it. You could almost do a sequel where you go and you actually get the crew back and you find a permanent solution.
Well, there was actually, like, the way the Infinity got stuck in here is that there's basically an entity that was holding the universes apart, and that went away. And the Infinity is now what's left. Is that Infinity is now what's holding that together. There was a permanent solution before, but that went away. So,
or was the previous solution actually only a temporary solution?
Yeah,
well,
like maybe another.
There always has to be something there to hold that up.
Yeah.
I think he's tying back into the Atlas mythos where with Atlas tricking Hercules into taking on the world so he can kind of get away.
So that was kind of
how did Atlas get stuck with the task in the first place?
Yeah. I mean,
so it's one of those things where, like, for me, it kind of like left me feeling a little bit cold, because it felt like we kind of went to this thing. We went really far. We went really, really far. And then we come back and we just kind of get this really kind of tricky situation where we know the sector is going to implode in 10,000 years. So, and we're just sort of left stuck with that. It's like, I don't really want to put that in my headcanon.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's kind of interesting.
I don't want the sectors to explode.
Is their explanation for the whole subspace layers thing is like the inverse of what happened in that one Voyager episode, where there was this natural, I guess you could say, gap between two of the subspace layers, which would like suck things into it periodically.
Yeah, the void.
Not the void, but that other one where it would, what it would do is it would manifest those little vortex things, or like almost like whirlpools.
And then the ships would be brought in. So it was kind of like a spin-off of one of the TAS episodes, where you have a small community of ships that are kind of like in there. They've got a thing going, like a semi-system going of pirating other vessels.
Well, I wouldn't say pirating, because they had this very elaborate code of conduct rules.
In Voyager, it was pirating.
Yeah, well, okay. The TAS one, they had created this
this council, basically
society that was like almost entirely static, because apparently they didn't need to eat while they were in this void, so they could just sit around and stare at each other all day.
Yeah, but in Atlas's Infinity, we just got that one ship, and then all the other quantum duplicates.
Well, we only ever see that one other.
Yeah, so you get the void, you get the two layers of subspace, and I think, like, with the Foundry effect, that was a pretty good one of using what are currently two bugged planet assets to sort of bring that all together, and kind of like what I thought it reminded me of is like where no one's gone before in TNG. That was kind of like where I immediately went with.
That's what I thought of immediately when you mentioned that there was a door that didn't follow the normal laws of physics, because that was a visual reference that they used in Where No One Has Gone Before. Said that scene where Picard is walking through the turbolift door, and oh wait, that's not what was on the other side of the door.
Yeah, so it could be like, that'd be, that would be a neat connection if you connect in Where No One's Gone Before with the Nexus. So, like, I think in general, this mission had some really good dialogue.
Yeah.
Just in the moment to moment, it's really good, really snappy. I love the captain options.
That's actually one of the unstated things about Where No One Has Gone Before is, where did the Traveler send them?
Yeah, I mean, you're just left to wonder.
It's obviously not someplace that's part of the physical universe as we know it. It's a place where thoughts can become reality.
As in
So-
Nexus? Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good connection there. But like, it's just, for me, it was just kind of like, it sort of left off, like it followed the narrative, I think, of the sort of the mythos a little too much, so that it kind of created an episode that was really sort of more tragedy, and there wasn't a whole lot else except a little sense of wonder. So you kind of have the Infinity as the most tragic starship that has ever existed. You have an infinite number of crews who have all ended up in this sort of this very tragic fate. It was just so, like, for me, I just felt sad,
and we weren't able to affect that. We weren't able to help.
Yeah, I mean, we basically just saw it, and then we sort of stabilized it, and then we left.
It's kind of like that TNG episode where Picard and the crew find this Federation spaceship drifting through space derelict, and then have to figure out what killed the crew of the ship. Obviously, it's too late for anyone to do anything about it. All they can do is figure out what happened and attempt to prevent such a disaster in the future.
Kind of, except
it's in that vein. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we have a lot less.
You can't save anybody, but you can, make sure that things don't get any worse.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I think it's
another
just like
example is that episode with that weird nebula where it interacted with Federation shielding technology by creating those energy discharges, where if you simply cranked up the power on your starship shields indefinitely, you would cause energy ripples to hit your ship that would ultimately be far too powerful for your ship to handle, which disabled one Federation ship and killed almost everyone on board. Which actually, it's the reason why the ship wasn't destroyed, is because as soon as the shields on the ship collapsed, the energy discharge effect went away.
Mm-hmm. So
I'd say that one.
Yeah, I think that was the one where they found the one small boy and then he tried to emulate Data. Was that the one?
Yeah, that one.
Is that the
Okay.
one? Okay.
Yeah. I'd say, like, for mission, it just really top notch for the writing. It almost is just sort of like it goes
good,
a little too far.
Good map work and everything like that is just maybe one too many beats on the story there.
Yeah, it's kind of like you almost wanted, like, it's sort of like we're sort of kind of just like introducing ourselves to the concept. There's more here, but we're not exposed to it. What I might have done instead is maybe sort of, this is the sort of like the starting point is you get the sort of the infinity where it is, you got the infinite dimensions. I might have brought in, instead of the Elorian, I might have brought in the entity who left in the first place, and then you work out a more permanent solution with that. Yeah. So that's kind of where I would have gone, because that would have felt like I had more initiative through the mission.
Well, see, to me, one thing to ponder here is that a mission like this, it comes across very differently if it's intended to be part one of however many missions, or if it's meant to be a perfect standalone.
I don't think he meant to do it as a two-parter.
No, it's just like you got a lot of, like, kind of like what Apex originally started out for me, is that you put in a lot of ambiguity, let players work with that, and then have a sort of a running plot where you're just going through, and then you're basically in and out. But then there's this much broader universe out there. I think it's like in a similar vein, except with Apex, I sort of made sure that there was sort of a little bit more. There was a lot more sort of a lot more going on moment to moment in terms of the action, frankly. With how that mission played out. So you could even just like completely ignore the backstory, like the larger universe stuff, and just focused on being chased in almost like an alien style sci-fi. So for this one, it's just like the mission is the larger stuff. So you're forced to sort of like bring your full awareness into trying to work out what's going on between universes. And that's pretty hard. And there was some stuff with, like, what's going on with the captain, what's going on with the crew, a lot of really good potential character stuff that dips into there, and then it's sort of out, and you're having to consider what's going on with the doorway.
It doesn't quite go there.
I would have consolidated it instead of trying to do the Elorian, which is kind of a bit tacked on. I would have tried to have done more with the Karoo specifically. I know maybe they could have done something with, like maybe they attempted to do this quantum phase, and instead of they thought maybe they could use their quantum duplicates to basically escape, like by running like all the possible quantum permutations. And if it fails, it traps like everyone on board, like in this quantum state. And so
I just thought of an interesting idea. Maybe you could say that the point behind creating all of the quantum duplicates was that if you had enough ships pushing the layers apart, they might be able to push them apart a little bit farther and have them actually
that's actually a really good idea. I mean, like you just have like a ton of infinities appear, and suddenly it's actually enough to start pushing the layers apart from each other. That's actually a really good idea, Mark.
That's pretty cool.
And I mean, we could have certainly done that in the Foundry too. Just use the MCC mob groups.
Mm-hmm.
And you could even have it shows some sort of motion, like it just not necessarily like a stop motion, but just like have an effect. And then have the two planets visibly further apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we can spawn and despawn planets at will.
Yeah, so that could have worked too. So as far as the challenge mission goes, this one was definitely a very good mission. I really enjoyed the ride.
It's definitely a quality mission. Bloodleaf in our chat room says an open-ended mission isn't bad as long as it doesn't leave you unsatisfied at the end, and I don't think it really left me unsatisfied.
Yeah, unsatisfied.
I got to the end and I was like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like where I was. I was just more down though. I mean that's kind of where I was. It was just like I'm now sort of left with this thing of I kind of want to go back to it. I just want to have another go at it. Because I know it's sort of like it's almost a thorn in the universe, and it's not going to go away. And if it goes away, it's just going to get explosive.
Well, okay. Here's something that we've done in the past with Foundry missions, and don't do often. It's if this was a Star Trek TV episode, would it fit with the TV series?
It would fit with TNG, definitely. I would think
it's a very TNG kind of episode.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking about it, is that it has all this weird stuff in it, and yet
and like early TNG, like
TNG season 1.
It's not like beyond anything that they did in the series. Ooh, like the Nagalum episode, kind of. That's one thing that it vaguely reminds me of. It's just that utter unexplainable weirdness happens, and you're like, why?
And I definitely like that. In sort of general principle, it's just with the way this one went in the end, I just sort of like, we're close, and then it's just like we just deviate a little bit, and now we're just sort of out of the universe. So it was really, really close for me being like, this is a really, really great Foundry mission. It's like, I want to go through the captain dialogue again. To go around for the plot again. It's
part of the reason why I feel like it would be much better as part 1 of 2 is the first thing I would want to do in a situation like that is figure out what the heck the other side of the door connects to.
Yeah. One thing you could try to do is just like a well-intentioned sort of like, okay, we got to do a permanent fix on this. And then that goes wrong. And then you can lead into more sort of real far out there with an ultimate solution somewhere along that line. If the author wants to continue it, I think it sort of it stands well on its own. It's just sort of like for me, the tone doesn't work with how I want it.
You wanted a little bit more resolution.
I wanted a little bit more resolution out of this one, because for me, it's just like, I mean, it's kind of like the Yellowstone. It basically puts the Yellowstone volcano into the Alpha Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to go off at some point.
It's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, and it's going to be really bad, but we don't have to worry about it.
Geologic scale.
Yes, we don't have to worry about it now, and maybe sometime in future we'll be taken care of. I guess it adds depth too, especially to the Alpha Quadrant, that you can have this sort of known phenomena in here. But then again,
it's also one of those things where if the phenomenon is, shall we say, exploited in the wrong way by the wrong people, it suddenly goes from ticking time bomb to lit match.
Actually, I mean,
So-
if I was like the Romulan Star Empire, that would be like a perfect thing to do.
Or the Sphere Builders.
Yikes.
Yeah, Sphere Builders, Undine, Borg. I mean, they presumably can all, hit this thing.
Any
Actually,
of
I
our
don't
dimension
think the
hopping
Borg
friends.
would want to do that. The Undine, yes, they're nihilists.
Undine,
They'd
oh, yeah.
do it in a heartbeat.
The Elachi.
Borg, I don't think
It would
the
depend
Borg
on
would
what-
do it.
They could do it if, if warp drive, standard warp drive would be affected, but for some reason, technobabble, transwarp wasn't affected, because then that gives them a tactical advantage.
Actually, you could state that because of the fact that they established that Borg transwarp actually creates tunnels through subspace rather than creating a static.
A static warp field bubble.
Not a static one, but a subspace bubble around the ship. It's not like pushing the ship into subspace, but it creates like a subspace field around the ship.
Mm-hmm. So
Which is just very different from Borg technology, because the Borg stuff, it actually shoves the ship completely into subspace.
Mhm.
Yeah, along with
Although
Slipstream.
I would have to say that the Borg technology, one thing about that though is that I would imagine that level of subspace disruption would make creating a stable transwarp tunnel rather challenging.
It could be challenging, but once they get, they can maybe move one ship through, and then it's in place, and then it's basically got free run of the place, because Starfleet vessels won't be able to respond with warp drive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think
So
this
anyway,
anomaly
that's
would
just-
be as damaging to subspace as it is to normal space. So
Yeah.
I don't think
So
it
anyway, though,
transwarp, regular warp. It's all pretty kibosh.
yeah.
In fact, weren't
So
the
anyway, though, it's
the Voth trying to use omega particle explosions to basically seal off their space from the Borg?
This is true, but I'm not 100% sure the Voth plan was fully baked, if you know what I mean.
Maybe not, but I think it's safe to say
were they
that
getting hit by the Borg, or was that the Vodvar? Because they used Borg special effects, but when we got to Delta Rising, we got they were being attacked by the Vodvar.
One thing that was eventually established is that the Voth were actually at war with all three of them. At one point.
Yeah.
That's why they were so desperate. It said, fighting the Borg, okay, sure. It's irritating and obnoxious. Whatever, we can deal with them. Then the Undine show up and decide to shoot holes in the Voth too. And I don't think they ever explained why the Undine decided to shoot holes in the Voth.
The Undine were basically shooting holes in everyone.
Okay, that works.
Yeah, because they didn't distinct, they were being hit by the Iconians, but they basically assumed, okay, it's just the people from the galaxy, the Milky Way again. So we're just going to attack the people from the Milky Way, and that's where we get the
The
attacks.
Iconians were using fake
I just
ships
thought of something. Is that the explanation for how the Iconians would pulled that plot off works even if you assume that they were multiple incursions and using fake ships from multiple races.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're never really explained in great detail, just that the Iconians were using robot ships that were built to look like Starfleet ships, or at least that's the part of it that we saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, kind of back to Atlas's Infinity. So that was our first challenge mission that we reviewed, and hopefully we'll be getting on to the other two next week.
Yes.
So make sure that you play them before then, because we don't want to completely spoil the entire challenge.
Yes.
Yes.
And the deadline for voting is June 5th, Monday the 5th. So
Any time or just on the calendar date?
by essentially the end of business that day. I think I put a 4 o'clock Pacific time limit on that. So there's only 3 missions, and they're all good. We played them; they're all good ones. So play and vote, and there we go.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you get to play Foundry missions knowing ahead of time that they're actually good?
Yeah, because I mean, I
assuming you
put in my
take our
vote.
word for it.
Yeah, I've already played 3. I put in my vote, and this was a hard one. I mean, for me, it was just like, oh. I mean, they're all, they're all very good. I mean, it's one of those it's one of those really great experiences in the Foundry where you're able to see 3 takes on the same principle. They're all good, and it's just like, I gotta choose one.
Well, that's why a long time ago, when I was doing one of the older challenges, I came up with a set of criteria that I would assign numbers to, and then add up the numbers to decide which one was best.
Yeah.
So some people could say, okay, so which one has the best map design? And then I would assign numbers based on the relative quality of the map design, and how well was the story written, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And one thing that you do have to come back to is how well does it fulfill the challenge? And of course the parameters this time were actually pretty broad. It's just what happened to this ship that disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think just in terms of,
I think actually all of the 3 missions fulfilled that without a doubt. So don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's move it along. We're going to do some work in the Foundry. We're going to set aside our 26th century stuff because we had a little discussion before the show in the chat room. We were doing a little audio test, and we had somebody in the chat room, guy who goes by
Spiritborn, I think.
At Spiritborn in Stowe.
Yeah.
That name sounds familiar.
As Foundry author, I believe you played one of his missions.
I played one of his missions. Oh, it was
that would explain where I've heard the name. Yeah.
Paying the price. I mean, there's 2 with price. So one was by Zeb Goodwin, and then one was by Spiritborn. They both had price in the name. But anyway, it's a new mission. He posted his entry on the forums, and he's looking at creating more. So yeah, new author. Awesome. Definitely give his stuff a look. He's
so he was asking, have we ever built a hangar for a Jupiter class ship?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, we haven't. Price of pieces, he says. That's
there we go. Yay.
So no, we haven't. Although Dragoon says that Sir Boulevard has. So apologies to Sir Boulevard if we plagiarize anything. It's unintentional. But we're going to create our own version of the hangar bay for a Jupiter class ship. So Dragoon is loading up the Foundry, of course. I've got a couple of screenshots to show you.
Is one of them going to be from another franchise?
It's the one that you linked, for one thing.
Oh, okay.
Is one of them. That one. And then the one from another franchise is also the other. Because obviously, the Jupiter class is a big old carrier. And so naturally, it's going to look like, it's built to carry fighters and lots of shuttles. So, it's not going to look unlike something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, I was having this music go through my head. Dun 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 dun.
And I was thinking not along the lines of Battlestar Galactica, which is basically an aircraft carrier in space, because it's built very differently. The Jupiter is. And so why don't we start, actually, Dragoon, if you want to show us a Jupiter class in the costume creator.
Okay. Sorry, I was just loading up your screenshots here. Okay. I will quick make my empty map. Empty outdoor map.
Naturally.
Okay, so if we
because what you want to look at when you look at the Jupiter class is where actually are the hangar bays.
This would be under Fed Jupiter. There it is, Federation Jupiter. Big old thing. So yeah, they
Certainly better than the old one.
yeah.
Oh yeah. But yeah, the hangar bays are just right on the side on the margin, which kind of reminds me in some ways of the one of the droid command ship from Star Wars Episode 3.
Yeah.
That was also featured heavily in Star Wars Battlefront on that one that one space map.
The old Battlefront.
That makes perfect sense.
But yeah, I mean,
my first thought is, and the first question you want to ask is, does the hangar bay go all the way through from one side to the other?
I don't think so in this case.
You don't think so?
Because
Really?
that would be. I mean, it'd be nice
you
for the
can't
build,
see it, but
I don't know. I mean, for a Fed starship, I mean, you kind of almost want to assume that there's going to be something big in between there. I mean, it could run all the way through. I
Maybe
know,
it's
like
like,
for me,
do you guys remember what the inside of the Enterprise D's main shuttle bay was supposed to look like?
I
I've actually seen pictures of. I could think of
You
several scenes
see
in
it once.
episodes where you see
yeah.
rather large shuttle bays in the Enterprise D, but I don't remember if those are actually the main shuttle bay.
Yeah, I did link off a that screenshot of a concept art for the Enterprise E shuttle bay for Nemesis.
I think it's a John Eves illustration, isn't it?
Possibly.
Hey, let me find an image and I'll add it into our collection.
It's the one. It's the one that I linked you.
But yeah, I mean, all those were sort of on the different setup of just having that rear-facing shuttle bay on the
just
saucer
one.
section. Yeah.
Also, our chat room points out that there is another hangar on the top of the primary holder.
Yeah, you can see that blue. So
Well,
you could.
you remember that episode where Geordi had to put out a plasma fire in a cargo bay by opening the cargo bay doors to space?
Yeah,
well,
that was one
when
of the
you-
secondary ones.
Well, what I was getting at with that, though, is that that cargo bay was, in fact, large enough to park runabouts inside.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
yeah.
actually looking for. I think like Nemesis.
There's
would
one where
probably-
you see it from the outside. It's cause and effect where they blow out the shuttle bay to move the ship. And it's the main shuttle
that
bay.
one.
You see it from there.
All right,
I
so
mean,
I'm gonna
Voyager,
throw up a screenshot of it's basically the deck plans for the Enterprise D. There was this thing they released. It was basically like all 42 decks like mapped out.
Yeah.
And I think they did one for the original Enterprise before too. But this is the one specifically for the layout of the main shuttle bay, and you can see it goes like all the way back to the center, and then there's like a central like a control area, like
Yeah,
in
let's
the
make
middle,
that.
and then it goes all the way around.
Yeah. I'm seeing that because you got the service facilities. Yeah, you can do a lot with that.
Yeah. And I threw in a couple more screenshots into the ones you gave me.
Yeah. Like I think the only the tricky part would be scale. So you'd probably be using the whole. If you wanted to get like really sell the scale, you might be using the most of the surface of the empty ground map. And
Which,
finding
the
ways of
Jupiter
using.
is supposed to be fairly big, so I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, so it just sort of we're going to have to think about like building this out like one scale up from.
Or you could take that top hangar and use that one. But in any case, obviously, first things first, we're going to need a floor.
All right, just throw up some of the screenshots. Can I get some
There's
inspiration?
certain things that are, it's a hangar, so it's going to look a certain way. Going to be open at one end or two ends, depending on how you'd determine that.
All right. Well, I mean,
And you need certain, like bays for shuttles to be worked on. I think we lost Duncan again.
The ways of Duncan are
issues.
mysterious. He comes and goes as he pleases.
So I think for our purposes anyway, we should definitely start with floor.
All right. Well, I mean, if you're smart, you put in a ceiling and a floor.
Well, yeah. We could be smart.
There's something else I was thinking about, though. That was a ground scale ship. Because if you look at the... I'm assuming we're building the... one of these main hangars on the side.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to see the... just barely see the nacelles. So I'm thinking...
I don't think you'd really be able to see them from that perspective.
Maybe you're right. You're probably right. Okay. So let's get a very big floor going.
Probably one of the dark gray metal ones.
We have more than one color of metal?
Probably one of the dark gray metal ones. Duncan's back.
Yep, I'm back because the echo kicked in. Yeah, so it's just basically when Skype and my Skype and Star Trek Online seem to be fighting over the same network ports, which causes my Wi-Fi adapter to get really, really, really confused, and then it just basically shuts off completely. And then I have to restart the computer to get it back on again.
That's so unfortunate.
So I've just got Skype running right now, and I changed the Skype settings for network ports. So there we go. But yeah, for metal, we've got several options for the big metal floor. So we can use a 500-foot Federation metal. We've got Romulan tiles. We've got Klingon metal, and then we've got the foundation blocks. So specifically, was it Type 3, which has the metal finish to it?
So I'm actually using the Federation metal floor.
Mm-hmm. So I have a thought about the sort of structure of this, and let's crib a little bit from that blueprint of the TNG shuttle bay. Okay, so the hangar goes all the way through from one side to the other, but there's this big structure in the middle that's has control areas and repair bays. And then it's open on either side of that. You could fly all the way through if you wanted.
Yeah, so I think that would be a great way. And then even on the side areas too, we can also add more facilities if we got the asset count.
Yeah. Okay, so as Dragoon is laying out some stuff, I took a trip recently, or actually now it's been quite a number of years, out to San Francisco, and I got to see the USS Hornet. Which is an old World War II Vietnam-era aircraft carrier that's been turned into a museum. And my dad, who served on aircraft carriers during the Vietnam War, was really an excellent tour guide. So he was showing us there's a forward area, which is, the bridge where the ship is, commanded from. And then on the back of the sail tower, there's where the commander of the air group has his, essentially it's like a second bridge. And he, directs all of the aircraft from there. So, you could have something like that in that central structure is where the commander of the air group has his control center. Because you know what? It's the 25th century. He doesn't need windows to see what's going on.
Indeed.
Eyewall.
Okay, I'm just going to fire this up real quick.
Bridge of the ship doesn't actually need to be on the top of the ship or on the outside of it.
Yeah, in easy torpedoing position.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's one thing that has always struck me as incredibly bizarre, is a simple idea of having it on the top of the ship where, I mean, it's like how often do you see someone like target the ship's engines or weapons or whatever? Why not just target the bridge?
Yeah.
Well.
So, I mean, the Enterprise D did have the battle bridge, which technically was, deep in the bowels of the
unless it's also separated, then it's back on top.
Oh yeah, then it's back on top.
Well, also, apparently Shinzon actually did target the bridge of the Enterprise E.
Oh yeah, because at that point,
that was about the only time we actually saw the bridge take a direct hit.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
there
was another time in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and then they are also the bridge of a parallel universe NX 01 Enterprise did get blasted off too.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, actually, you know what? This reminds me of the funniest scene in Nemesis. You remember what that one was?
I don't remember laughing a lot in that. No.
After the fight in the Bassin Rift was over, Toreth, or is it Terrace? Well, I forget. One of those two Romulans hails the Enterprise to offer her assistance with helping to repair the damage done to the Enterprise. Picard goes on screen and then looks at the gaping hole in the wall where the view screen used to be, and it's like, never mind. Audio.
Dinatra is the one you're looking for.
Oh yeah, Dinatra, that's what it was.
Yeah, Terrace was in the first episode with the Iconians.
Yeah. Both those characters are in Stowe, or at least they were. Is Terrace still around somewhere?
No, she got the 300 kicked into the depths of Estelane, one of the Dyson spheres by Sela.
That's right. Yeah.
Toreth, if I remember right, Toreth was one of the people who got killed off in the Path to 2409.
And I think Toreth and Terrace were played by the same actress.
Yes. Which was actually kind of interesting because if you pay close attention, while there's a lot of similarities, they're just not exactly the same.
Well, and Dinatra was only in from the STFs, wasn't the old STFs? Because nobody pays attention to the story.
Is only seen in game as Dinatra of Borg.
Yeah.
Because
she got herself assimilated.
They don't explain how she got assimilated. Really?
I remember her being in the Path of 2409, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's mentioned that she was acting as the commander of a small armada that flew into some sort of unknown subspace disturbance, which apparently she flew into because it didn't appear to be a particularly violent subspace disturbance, yet they were never seen again. And somehow they got assimilated in the process. Kind of
She's
interesting.
the one in the hive, right?
Dinatra was Big Warbird in Kinnemer and Stasis.
Oh, Kinnemer, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of her, I guess you could say, minions or subordinates from her Romulan Navy stuff is the boss on the Kinnemer ground one, if I remember right.
So Drogyn is trying to figure out which walls to use here.
Yeah. Well, it's a very high space, and I don't think any of our walls are going to reach high
maybe
enough.
You need 2 layers of that wall.
Yeah,
there.
And that would work. I think would work pretty well because I think it'd be harder to layer up the standard Fed wall because you have a little bit. There's stuff going on differently at the top and the base.
Yeah, this one I think the bottom and the top are mostly the same size.
Mm-hmm. Or at the very least, they blend well together. Because I've had to, encounter how to raise the ceiling up with this wall type, and it worked out just fine.
Okay, so maybe raise it up about 2, and then I think we'll use that then we'll bring down the ceiling to match.
The plan B could be fun.
No, I guess we've already reached the ceiling.
Oh, have we?
Yeah, because look, the very top, is missing.
Ah, yeah, that's right. That's right. You got, yeah, I was trying to look for parallax. I don't know. We got that then. I guess then it would just be making sure that they sort of form a solid joint between them. So you got to kind of layer them up.
I gotta raise it still. I gotta.
This actually opens up an interesting possibility of having like balcony levels too.
Well, we have
just
to
like-
because if we want to have a control center in the center.
Yeah. Do, 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 do. Looking at the loading screen. Looking at the loading screen.
That's why you
Alt-
always have
alt
on
tab-
music or something.
Or just alt tab to the forum to chuckle at the bizarre things people have posted this time.
Oh god, I've been doing that a little bit more than I should recently. Apparently, fixing the mirror universe invasion was terrible. It finally works now. We can't have nice things.
See, I've actually noticed one incredibly great thing that changed when they revamped the Qui system, and it's something that I had been hoping that they would fix for a very, very long time, and I am very, very happy they finally fixed it. Namely, that you no longer get kicked from missions when you crash.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Granted, at one point in time, it wasn't like this. It was something that got accidentally, I guess, introduced somewhere along the line, and it just took them a long time to fix it.
Yeah.
But still, it's gone. Yay!
Yep. And along the lines of teaming, I noticed that in Kale's live stream, he did do a group of 3. And it did get down to a group of 2 at one point. That's why the mission kind of broke. But it does open up the possibility that if they looked at the teaming system, we might not have a teaming bug anymore. But we can investigate that at a later date in the Foundry. So
our author who suggested this build idea is kind of doing his own in a little bit different style. He's doing one that can fit. It's like one of the ships that can fit frigates, which of course the scale in Stowe doesn't tend to really work out for that. But if it did, he's building that. So basically, he's got a ground scale Sao Paulo because it's probably about the smallest one there is, and he's building one around it.
Mm-hmm.
What do we
So
have?
that'll be quite
We've
something.
got we got arrow wings.
Yeah. Arrow
Okay, so
Wing
we're
is, I
just
think,
basically building one for shuttle size ships. So
Yeah.
I mean, Arrow Wing, yeah, we could definitely have that in there.
yeah.
So we get do runabouts. I just
Yeah,
throw
the
in this one to
Yellowstone.
see how they fit.
Yeah. Do we want to do the DS9 runabout or the Yellowstone runabout?
Both.
Oh, definitely Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Well, if you use both, then you've got more variety.
Oh, yeah.
We have the Yellowstones as a placeable asset, right?
Yep, we do. That's what I've made a point of only doing the Yellowstone runabout. Yeah, Sao Paulo would fit in this
I don't
space.
know if
If we didn't have an
one
interior,
is
if we didn't have that
quite big enough to-
interior.
Do we have those boxy Type 8 shuttles from TNG?
Yep.
Hmm.
We got the boxy Type 8. I mean, I think if we did a Sao Paulo, it would cut into the central
Yeah, I'm
structure
looking
that
at
we're
it.
thinking about.
It's not quite going to fit.
Yeah, I
unless
mean, you
we-
could sort of build from scratch, but the design we're working with probably wouldn't accommodate it.
Do we have a ground scale version of a Miranda or Pioneer?
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah,
there's
all the other
Miranda.
ground scales are
Yeah.
pretty big. Actually,
they're pretty big.
we wouldn't do this, but go to the KDF Moog. Because that one actually is a little bit weird with the scaling.
Yeah, that's much smaller than it ought to be.
Yeah, it's much, much smaller than it would be.
It still doesn't quite fit in our space, but
No, but it's like, all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute.
so what we really need is the what's the Aquarius?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that one. I think.
Nah, I don't
The
think
worker
we-
bees are just incredibly tiny, though. I mean, it's just great for more variety, but it's almost you gotta like put a lot of those in, or just kind of like use those to fill spaces, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Let's see, where's the?
Yellowstone's got to be in there somewhere. No, we can't do an eclipse. Can it be really tried?
Some of them may not be labeled as ground scale.
Oh, Yellowstone. It's also worth pointing out with Lighting 2.0 that we do have lights attached to the on versions of the shuttles.
So nacelle glows and stuff like that.
Yep. Although it's funny because we have nacelle glows even for the off versions.
Oh, yeah.
Just get lots of nacelle glows. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you almost have to just use the on ones unless you just sort of want to just kind of deal with the funny lighting effect.
I'm gonna fire up a test on this one. We can at least see the ships placed in the space.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's see. Yeah, the only time I did do a hangar bay recently, much smaller scale, but that was for Starfleet Security 3, and it was a miscellaneous alien / Ferengi trading station. And I will say, to do sort of like a neat hangar bay door effect, you could use the cave wall pieces. It kind of gives a little bit more of a kind of a Star Wars type of hangar bay, instead of what we'll presumably do is kind of like presume force field, because then we get the Starscape.
I used a caved wall as a hangar door once, but it takes a lot of them, and this doorway is pretty huge.
Yeah, and it's basically
only
getting to the
put-
point
yeah.
where it wouldn't really pay to have like it's basically what you do for a small scale hangar, something that basically accommodates 1 or 2 shuttles.
Yeah,
The opening does look good, though. as far as
Yeah,
the shape of it.
need to swap out
that reminds
the
me
backdrop.
that the biggest shuttle bay in Star Trek Voyager was actually designed to have an extra large shuttle or hairdryer in it. Why? Good question. I don't know. There's a lot of things about that star base that I don't know. Oh well.
yeah. It's kind of funny though when we're building the space out. It's kind of approaching. Well, we're bigger, but I don't think we're a huge amount bigger than the TOS shuttle bay.
Yeah, really. Because there have been several.
I mean, we're
scenes
like
where
in
we
terms
got
of the
a
overall.
really good look at the TOS shuttle bay. I mean, it's like this 2-story enclosure, which, to be honest, looks an awful lot like the one you see in the Pioneer ship and the Agents of Yesterday.
Yeah, because they kind of got a very similar. They've got a similar star drive section. I would just say that's probably big enough to accommodate the Arrow Wing and the Denobe runabout, and then goes a little bit further back. We definitely don't have the side length. We do have a big ceiling on that one though.
Danube.
Oh, the Danube. Yeah. The river.
It's a very important river, by the way. You should know how to pronounce it.
Danube.
So, can't say you didn't learn anything by watching the Foundry Roundtable.
we need a Star Trek style. The more you know.
Danube's in Eastern Europe, right?
Yes.
No, Central.
Romania,
Danube
Hungary, that kind of thing.
if I remember right, it's also in Germany and
Yeah, it's quite a long river.
yeah.
It goes all the way down to the Mediterranean, I believe.
Yeah, because my first thing is I thought of the Danube Wells, which is something that I think it's as far north as Holland, and they still catch them in the Danube River in Holland. I don't know.
I just happened to have been reading a book on Vlad the Impaler recently. And at the time, the Danube was a very important natural barrier between Europe and the Ottoman Empire.
Did they suck at building boats or something?
Actually, a little bit.
Actually, now that I think about it, that part of the Danube is actually a rather large river.
Yes.
Because what makes the Danube Wells catfish so interesting is the fact that they can be caught on a regular basis at sizes greater than 200 pounds. You don't have a fish that big in this small river.
No, you don't. So Dragoon is creating a shape of our
Yeah, I was actually just going to suggest that. Can we curve it? It's like, yeah, we're curving it.
Yeah, but I'm realizing my curve. I'm going to have to
curve walls.
You might need like a little bit of a straight section, or even just sort of exaggerate the curve. So now just sort of like have one piece that continues along the same curvature. So it curves more dramatically at first, just one click rotation.
Or maybe just a small curve and then back to straight again.
Yeah. Or just do two units per click rotation.
Well, I'm thinking it might do is curve and then I take
curve, then straight, curve, then straight, curve, then straight.
Well,
so then you get like
in this section.
Units.
In this section, I want to have the what is it? The little bays for the individual shuttles.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe I can use that to kind of extend out the.
Like little miniature hangars inside the
maintenance
main
bays.
hangar.
Maintenance bays.
Yeah.
And
where
sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, where we inevitably basically clean out all the miscellaneous dust, debris, and scorch marks from when the shuttles get shot down, which they always do.
All right, I'm gonna be smart about this and not
where they clean it out from the vaporized remains of the pilot that got hit.
Yeah.
Gives you lots of story options. You can go and talk to the maintenance crew that's working on a shuttle that you need to take.
Guess what we found this time?
I'm serious, sir. If you crash this again, I am not fixing it.
You can even have like little side objectives where you basically find a crew that's like, oh, we're not going back towards that shuttle. It's like, what's going on? There's something in there, and then you can basically go through an optional objective where you have to take out a critter group.
Or maybe they found a shuttle designed by the same people who built Alice.
Alice.
You could even also put some of the like a Ferengi shuttle in here, and it's like a Ferengi trader is broken down. The ship offered assistance.
And there's a number of other non-Federation shuttle varieties that are in the Foundry. There's Romulans. There's Lodwar, Lodwar fighter.
Ferengi shuttle, and then do we have a Klingon one?
No.
I
don't think so.
We don't even have something like the Tow Dudge or the General's Chariots.
No, I'm just thinking like
those are the two oldest Klingon shuttles.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the standard one.
I don't think we have either of them in for.
Yeah, you only.
Ground scale asset.
Yeah, so it would only be. Yeah, it would only be stuff.
So I mean, there's some options there, but not all.
Yeah.
Duncan, while we're doing this, can you go find me the list of space backdrops that can do lighting?
Okay. Because that's actually something that probably we kind of want to repeat at a regular basis.
Well, and Johnny Snowball in the chat room is asking about it. So.
Yeah, so I'm just going over the forums right now. I did find more. Okay. And there's a weird interaction effect, too, on one of these. So the original list, and I'm on Oh, dang it. On the wrong computer. I found it on the desktop and Skype's running, or the, Twitch is running on the tablet, so let's just go to the other computer now. So anyway, though, I did find what was going on with Zarya. Because it was the one default backdrop that had light associated with it. And that's because it had two custom backdrops. But the effect they produced together is different from any one of those individually. So I'll go ahead, and I also added that to the thread too. So I'll go ahead and post this here. And I do highly recommend authors take a look at this because it does very much improve Lightning 2.0 Foundry missions. Because like if you play a lot of Foundry missions now, especially older ones, all the lighting basically is flat. I mean, so you Foundry missions now, the space looks almost completely flat, except for newer missions built with this lighting. So this is definitely, if you're making a mission now that has space lighting, highly consider doing a custom backdrop with one of these because it does really improve the visuals. So the full list is Casperia Prime, Casperia Prime 2, Memory Alpha, Romulus Supernova, Sector Space 1, Sector Space 11, Sector Space 4, Sector Space 5, Sector Space 6. And the Sector Space lightings differ on the fog. So as objects become more distant, you'll see them drop out of view. So Sector Space 8 is the last one. And there's also variation in the intensity of lighting, the direction of lighting. Trailer, and then Vulcan are the last ones. This is the list that Dragoon put together. I found out two more. So Orange Clouds 3 has an overhead white light to it. And I'm not sure about fog on that one. But if you have Zarya and Orange Clouds 3 together, there's an angled orange light that matches what you see in the Zarya mission. And that's pretty dramatic too. And the note there is that Zarya by itself doesn't do anything. So Zarya by itself and Orange Clouds have different lighting effects than those two together. So apparently there are interaction effects for these. I don't suspect there are many because it would also basically it would only correspond to when we see that happen in a standard backdrop. But that is the full list, and I linked that off in the chat room. People watching the stream later on, you can find that on the forums to Star Trek Online Foundry section, and I posted in there recently, so it should be on page 1. So just look for Greendragoon's post.
Times like this, I kind of wish Foundry or Starbase UGC, which was good about listing off all this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I did recently put a new sort of mission thread of my own together, including various resources as well. And I think that was listed in there. So it's just like just trying to do as much as I can there just to make sure that there's a good list of assets, just at least somewhere that's going to get bumped up at a semi-regular basis.
So I like what you're doing there, Dragoon. You got a neat little alcove thing that you could then duplicate.
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, try not to do this with too many assets, but
that's one way that you can kind of cut down on build time sometimes is if you know you're going to use something more than once, like a piece of a building or something like that, make it one time and then duplicate it. And, make it so that you can easily select just the parts you need. That was how Johnny Snowball had me build his presidential briefing room. Is basically he built a section of wall off to one side, and then we just duplicated that a whole bunch of times.
all right, let's fire up. See that. So I'm swapping out. I've got the more metal-looking walls, kind of making up the sides of the bay itself. But I kind of wanted to try switching to the more hallway-style walls for the alcoves to kind of separate them out.
Yeah.
Plus, we get some lighting off of those, and
So one of the things that I was doing also in the Foundry this week was I was kind of looking through some space maps, some of the existing ones, to see what might have some interesting geometry or interesting stuff to it, rather than building my own. Because, you know, obviously for a lot of us experienced authors, the first thing we do is load up an empty space map and start putting stuff on it. It was like, you know, what's already available that maybe I could use that would look interesting. And I found one, and I forget what the name of it is now, but it had like 2 planets right close together and some space stations and asteroids in between. It's like, oh, this is perfect.
See what happens when they do this. Yeah, I mean, more so than when I normally build, I'm really trying to keep an eye on the assets and the asset count, because I know.
Yeah.
Because I want this running all the way around, and that's going to just eat up assets like you wouldn't believe. So start basic, and then flourish out from there.
Yep. And I'll tell you that's what Snap to Build it, or Snap to Grid is there for.
Okay, that works. Can bring it down a little bit, but then it still goes all the way up to the ceiling, and I can actually cut out a wall piece there.
Yeah, that looks nice.
Here, actually, I should, for the sake of you guys, you can guys see what I'm doing a little bit more in real time.
So we're actually coming up to our time limit. So kind of zoom out and show us what you've got so far. We've got a good start on it, and I think this is one we'll want to revisit. So you've got kind of the basic starting walls of the openings in either side of the ship. And then you were working on those bays. Basically, you got one, and then you're going to duplicate it a whole bunch of times to create kind of the inner walls.
Yeah, I might do
and then we'll create our central structure as well.
Might do like a custom bay, like directly at the side point for like a runabout or something. Mm-hmm. So just to break it up, but then do the arc itself on either side. There's going to be these little shuttle bay ones that I'm making now, and then just will copy paste.
Yeah. I think we're definitely onto something that could be quite cool here, though.
And then
for sure.
2 central area, which I'm thinking like a raised room. And then if we still have assets left, I might do try to do some lines or something along the floor.
Yeah, you got to do something to make the floor look a little interesting, because otherwise it's just a big flat expanse of gray.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things that's get the necessities in first.
Because you got to have assets left to do that.
I know when Sir Boulevard was building
might not.
his shuttle bay, he was constantly complaining about bouncing against the asset limit and constantly having to make decisions.
I don't doubt it.
So I actually remember
there at this point.
Some of the recommendations I made to him at the time is if you don't need to show the entire bay, limit where the player can go and build the area close to the player in great detail, but then only vague thoughts like far away.
Essentially what they did with the Earth Space Dock hangar.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like Cryptic doesn't have to fight their own set of limitations.
Yeah. Why don't you put up our contact info?
Okay.
We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at foundryroundtab. Drogyn can be reached at Drogyn1701. Duncan can be reached at Gorgonops_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be on next week with the other 2 mission reviews for the challenge and whatever else we come up with to do.
Since voting won't be quite closed by the time we record that, will it?
No.
Nope. So it'd be the show after next that we'd be announcing a winner.
Yes.
Yeah. But definitely get your votes in. I mean, we definitely want as many people's thoughts as we can get.
These are good missions too. So yeah, definitely, get playing. It's there's real fun stuff, and it's kind of like, hey, it's big thing in the Foundry community. So if you want to support us, that's definitely a way to go.
Yep.
But for now, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.